is all about restart in the new environment, in the event environment. It is going to be about an hour long, and it's a webinar format where we will have 4 special guests as our panelists. And momentarily, I will introduce who they are. In the meantime, if you haven't joined or if you're not familiar with the Zoom functions yet, we're really fortunate that there's some fun features. So there is a chat box, so please continue to use that if you want to introduce yourself, where you're from, and maybe even why you're interested in this topic would be great to see. And on top of that, there is also a Q&A. So if you have any special questions that you would like the panel to discuss or help answer when we get to that point, please feel free to type that there so we can manage that part. I will be co-hosting with Seth Lee. And before I continue, Seth, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yes, thanks, Connie. Definitely, I think you've covered most of that. I want to just acknowledge as well that, you know, we're gathered on the shared territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nations. You know, we appreciate, you know, that we can all be on these lands together. And I also want to mention as well, just you know, a big shout out to our, you know, advisory committee team. And, you know, we've renamed ourselves the ConnectWithBurnaby committee. So, you know, Bek, who is a panelist today, also Connie K. Santos, who's also moderating, Alice Wong from Metropolis at Metrotown, and Adrian from Cuccio, who he could not join us today, but he represents over 60 post-secondaries in the IT sector. So I just wanted to recognize them for all their hard work. And, you know, 14 weeks is really kind of, you know, we've been on for quite a while. So that's great. And so, Connie, I'll let you kind of go ahead and, you know, introduce each of the panelists, and so we can get started.
Amazing. So as you can see also on the screen that's being shared as well is the panel that we have in front of us. We have 4 amazing experts, experienced individuals that's sharing their insight and perspective on this topic. I'll start off with Bek Shamsiev. He's the MBA, is a passionate hospitality leader who has worked his way up from being a bellman at a luxury international hotel in Asia at the age of 18, wow, to a dual director of sales and marketing role he currently holds with Vancouver-based executive hotels and resort chains. So Bek, thank you so much for your time in joining us. And the next person we have is Christine Barnett. She is the Associate Director for Employer Engagement, Career Management Center, SFU Beedie School of Business. Christine is focused on bridging engagement between organizations and students in meaningful and international ways. Christine, thank you so much. It was a very last minute request and you made it possible to join us today. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you. And we have Eddie, a friend that we've seen before that's joined our social hour. I'm really excited that he's here again to share his perspective. Eddie is the president and CEO of, how do I say this one, your company name properly, Eddie? I don't want to mess this up.
Andromeda.
Andromeda is the only consultant agency of its kind dedicated to helping event hosts to search, negotiate, and contract with hotels. So if there's anyone out there that needs his service, you know where to find Eddie. In addition to that, we have a very special guest, Isabel Kolic, who is committed to well-connected, sustainable communities and strong local economies. In her current role as Executive Director of Heights Merchants Association, she oversees work that supports the Burnaby Heights Commercial District. So Isabel, thank you so much for your time as well, and welcome to our panelists. Without further ado, that was just your title and a very snippet of what you do and where you're coming from. So let's start the conversation with a deep dive into what you've experienced so far with COVID and how you've pivoted that to the current time that your current experience now. Shall we start with our friend here? Oh, where did my screen go?
Looks like my video is frozen.
You're frozen. We're having some technical difficulties today. Little fun times. Okay, let's start with Bek. Bek, are you ready to start?
Born ready. Thank you very much, Connie, for the introduction. It is amazing to see today's crowd, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to share what we are experiencing in the hospitality industry, and specifically for the hotel aspect and the conference-based aspect of the business. I represent Executive Hotels and Resorts, as Connie have mentioned. We do have 13 hotels coast to coast in Canada and the States. Most of our locations are in Lower Mainland. I do represent our Burnaby and Coquitlam properties. So we closely work with Tourism Burnaby, and I am part of the Connect with Burnaby advisory committee as well. In regards to, I'm sure all of you and all of us have been educated well enough in terms of connecting and attending all of the webinars these days. So it does become overwhelming. So I think our part as hospitality leaders and hospitality professionals is going back to the basics. Sure, technology is there, but then what connects us really is human-to-human connection. It could be over the phone, or it could be via other services like Zoom and FaceTime. But the fact is, until we talk to our customers, until we talk to our partners, we don't know what they want. So for us, in our scenario, the first question was, obviously it costs $1 million to ask or get an answer for, is what do people want? Given the current circumstances, given the all of the confusion and all of the information that's been shared all over the media, what do people want really? Okay, and can we provide any support, or can we provide any help from our side as hotels, restaurants, meeting and event planners, and so on and so forth. So that question was clear for us, so we had to react right away and connect with all of our partners and all of the organizations that we do business with, and we're proud of being selected as their vendors as well, just to ask that similar question: what can we help you with? So it did take a while, I would say 2 to 3 weeks to start getting responses, because everybody is working from home, understanding that they're trying to maneuver their family responsibilities. But we did get positive feedback, and we started to pivot our services to that. Specifically to for the events side, we had to pivot a lot, I would say, because there are no more buffets, as you know, no more parties that you used to hold, or no more large conferences over 50. So one of the things that we have done that have worked in terms of the event booking is being very flexible. It is challenging when it comes to some venues and some brands to be flexible on a property level, but that is what it takes to be able to compete in this market, and also to be able to relate to your consumer or partner and close a business as quick as possible. It's not the time to make money, but we're all trying to keep our staff employed and try to rebuild the business to the level where we can be comfortable and proceed, with new strategies and new budgets that we will be all remaking. So part of the flexibility that I have mentioned is it has to do with the protocols. Obviously, all of you, including us, had to implement all of the safety protocols, but also flexible with the floor plan and table settings, let's say, right? Normally hotels have 6 foot or 8 foot or 6 foot round tables. That has been the industry standard for years. But with the current standards, those tables are no good anymore if you want to maximize your square footage at the conference space. So we had to adjust and quickly react and source 2x3 tables that are individual, personal tables that you used to sit on maybe during the high school or at the university, depending on where you went to the school at. So those worked really well, because that maximized the floor square footage usage for us. And also, keep everybody safe and within the 6 feet or long, further away from each other. And the other thing is the food and beverage. Again, that is also something that we had to pivot big time. We had to rework our menus to fit customer budget, as well as to be somehow profitable and cover the costs that you normally may have. And the third one is your ratio. As you know, especially if you have been booking the events, the ratio for the number of people and the size of the space and the food and beverage minimal. So that formula is out the window, as you all know. We had to rework that to fit the customer needs, because we're not expecting customers to come up with double the budget for the same training that they have to host, let's say. So we have been flexible on upgrading the spaces or basically using the larger spaces for a lot less rental or a lot less minimum requirement.
That's really great. Thank you so much for sharing so much in the beginning. We're going to save a little bit of that because I know there's a lot more conversations, a lot more details that we will continue to share. Let's share the stage with our other panelists. So let's go to Isabel. Isabel, can you share just a little bit more in-depth details about your current role and how COVID has impacted what you've done in the past and what you need to do now?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, nice to see everybody here. To give everybody a bit of understanding, the Heights Merchants Association is a BIA, a business improvement area. That means that we're a designated commercial district that we kind of tax ourselves, where all the merchants pay an extra levy through their rents and their commercial properties to foster economic development of the area. So in ordinary times, our work would comprise doing marketing, advertising, maintaining our website, also physical improvements like public art and urban revitalization, litter pickup, kind of basic initiatives like that, but as well events. So community and member events, small ones like our sorry, I just got an alarm. Small ones like our merchant social for less than 100 people, Halloween on the Heights for 3,000 people, and our largest festival, which is Hats Off Day for 60,000 people. So my job at the HMA is to create the strategic direction, to work with the board to create the strategic direction of the association, to manage the association itself, to lead staff, to fundraise, provide supervision for those projects and initiatives, including the events. So when COVID hit, some of our activities continued, but most of them were just halted because we had to put our attention on helping our merchants survive. So that involves scouring the internet to get them the resources and links that they need to get themselves the help that the support that they needed. We needed to, it was basic crisis management the first month or two. And we had to cancel Hats Off Day. And so for the first couple of months, we actually didn't think we were going to do it. And then in early March, once things started to stabilize and we could all catch our breath, we thought amongst ourselves and we thought, okay, well, if we can't do a physical event, I wonder if we could do a virtual event and adapt it to a new reality. I don't know if that helps as an introduction.
No, it's great. Thank you so much. Really great insights in terms of what's happening in your world. Let's move on to Eddie. Eddie, can you share some insights in terms of what's happening with your business and how COVID has changed it?
Well, certainly for last few months, it has been extremely difficult for meeting planner. Very much like a hotel world, we are faced with enormous amount of work. Rather than booking new business, we unfortunately had to cancel a lot of existing business, and a lot of partners are very easy to work with. However, there are few hotels that do not see COVID as a force majeure or a risk that they should absorb. So that's a little bit hard for a lot of event hosts. They felt that after years of partnership, during the crisis, some of the hotel are not sympathetic to their needs. So that's certainly what I have seen. And right now, as the world opening up, we are seeing a lot of events are trying to come back, and obviously they are set up a criteria and the wish list they have, and we must, consider different position because of the world is a very different place compared to 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago. And we in the hospitality world must change in order to survive. If we stick to the good old ways, there's only going to be one direction, and that's not up. So we must change. And then, afterwards, I can talk about different things I hear from our clients, what they need.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Eddie. And Andrea Ma in our chat box says she loves your backdrop. She's saying stellar. So thank you for that. And a quick question to Beck. People are wondering, where did you find those 2x3 tables?
That's a great question. Again, that came down to being connected with your partners in the area. Those specific tables are not available normally through the rental companies that are traditionally used, but it was specifically the partner that we have been doing business with. So I asked, would it be possible to rent you tables? It's just a casual question. Obviously, we have good relationship with our partners, and they were able to make that available for us.
Okay, will you be able to help someone connect with your partners to get those tables that they may need as well?
If they're local in Metro Vancouver, certainly, yes.
Okay, so connect with Beck if you're really looking for those for your events as well. We're gonna go now to Christine. Christine, same question for you in terms of what has happened, in terms of what has COVID changed in terms of your, current or past recent world to now. Oh, you need to unmute.
Sorry, I always forget that. Yes, we've had to move very quickly in the university environment because students were in the middle of exams, in classes, and students are looking for jobs all the time. So we quickly moved all classes online, and that will continue until the end of December, unless there are classes that really need one-on-one experiences. They might make exceptions for that. And then in terms of events, we do a lot of presentations and panel events, career fairs, and we've moved that all online. We've probably run at least a dozen, if not more, since April already. So we adjusted very quickly. We've had to, well, just to give you some scope, so we've got almost 30,000 SFU students, around 6,000 grad students, and just I'm specifically with the Beedie School of Business. We've got about 4,000 undergrad students and 700 graduate students. So that's all we're dealing with. We're trying to connect back with the recruiters and employers, but they're not quite ready yet. They had to do their own adjustments. They're dealing with onboarding processes, where their staff is working from. So we've had to be patient with that. But the students are like, where am I going to work this summer? Where am I going to work in the fall? So we've been going along with the innovation very quickly, but we've had to make very quick assessments as to the value. So we can't do things just for the sake of showing that we're doing things. Because everything's online, the classes are online, students are zoomed out. Like, we can't expect them to do 4 or 5 hours of classes and then join one of our events for another 2 hours and do this day after day. Just understanding that everyone, whether it's us, our students, the SFU leadership, our employers and recruiters, everyone is on their own separate COVID journey. And so we're trying to learn where everybody's at, what they're ready for. And yes, I've been attending a lot of different webinars, having to jump on board very quickly. And for my own part of the COVID journey, it's been about prioritizing. And this brilliant slide came up, and this is how I'm sort of treating this summer, at least. Who knows how it'll be in the fall. But so with priorities, sort of choosing one good thing over an even another good thing. So lots of great ideas, but which one to go with? And then, of course, safety over productivity, trust even over process. And this last one is really hard for me. Experimentation even over perfection. So if things go out and they don't, they're not grammatically perfect, or the spelling, or if we get glitches, as I've had many today in various Zoom meetings and calls, that's okay, because we're all experimenting right now.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Christine. And I really love all the quotes that you've had. And I think the most important one is like experiment, because nothing is perfect right now. And every day it changes in terms of what the conditions are, what we can and cannot do. So being able to flex and experiment, and but still really keep on top of mind the safety of everyone, because we have to provide that confidence that it will be okay, that we can reconnect again. So thank you for that feedback and that experience that you've shared. I'm going to jump into the next question, and I think it just rallies back to the topic that we're all wondering: how to restart, who is restarting? And we're in phase 2 going to phase 3, and there's going to be a phase 4, and there's different levels of businesses or corporations that are in different phases in terms of what they can and cannot do. So everyone's very curious. So can you share maybe a little bit more insight that you, and maybe even add on to what you've already shared in terms of how do you actually reset your business and be ready for your clients? I know, Beck, you've mentioned that you're reaching out, you're asking what can they do, what they need, but can we share a little bit more? Because I know you're back in the office now, Beck, and you've had conversations with your clients, and now it's like, can you share a little bit more of like what safety measures that you've been able to tell them that you're doing at your hotel, and what are they asking specifically that may not have been already implemented?
Absolutely. The safety features for hotel space or conference space is similar. That are the guidelines that are shared by provincial and federal government health authorities. So we're definitely following all of those rules, but that was not enough. So we basically had to step up and do more to ensure that people do not have the anxiety when they travel, or do not have anxiety when they have to, or they're asked by their employer to attend an in-person meeting, which sometimes have to happen. So protocols have been stepped up. Instead of having 24-hour, quarantine period for the guest rooms, we had to, increase it to 3 nights, which is 72-hour, which is the longest that I have heard that some of the hotels have also implemented, which really ensures that the guest room is safe to enter and stay. And we also needed to ensure that our safety, our staff safety is also there. So we're not allowing our staff to do the service during the stay of the hotel as well. And in regards to the restart, what we are seeing is mostly our local partners that have a demand for their in-person meetings or trainings, because as you know, everybody has to adjust and retrain their staff, at least the senior level, or if they're in the frontline work or service, they have to retrain everybody, and they're doing it in step-by-step process. One of the first steps is having smaller group of trainings. Instead of having hundreds of people gathered in the ballroom, now we're seeing that the trend is, we're booking, weekly trainings, Monday through Friday. Every day was a group of 50. And also that group of 50 is also something that people are worried in terms of the selling the space. Okay, I can only sell the event for up to 50 people, but that's only for one space, right? So that restriction is not for the whole venue. You have multiple meeting rooms, so be creative in regards to breaking them up into different spaces, so that we have been able to do. And so some of the trainings are happening for up to 75 or 100 people at any given day, but ensuring that they're on separate floors or have separate entrances and exit points, and all of the guidelines are followed.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Beck. I'm going to jump over to Isabel. And Isabel, you had this major event that you had to run with Hats Off, and it's an event that I think from the past, there's an expectation in terms of what the experience is, and now with COVID, we can't do that anymore. What have you done differently now in terms of the planning of what is possible this year, and what do you see the future will look like for that event as we kind of look at the restart mode?
For sure, yeah. So to give everybody a little bit of context, Hats Off Day is a community celebration that has multiple components. It's an all-day-long event happening on the first Saturday of every June. It's about 35, 36 years old, and it attracts about 60,000 people every June. And it has these different components that lends it vitality throughout the day. So it always starts off with a family fun dash, which is a short race that parents and kids do together, of kind of encouraging family fitness. followed by a Main Street style parade, followed by a street party that lasts all day long, where everybody just floods Hastings Street, all 6 lanes, for 2 kilometers. It's massive, and we have, you know, all the entertainment and food and demonstrations, and all the merchants are hosting it, and it's a real point of pride for our community. The whole point of it is to keep it as local feeling as possible, because it's one of the few community parades and events of that size in the Lower Mainland. So, you know, that's the way it was. And now that COVID is with us, and like I mentioned in my earlier introduction, we at first thought that it was canceled. We didn't have the attention for anything else until early May. And then internally we discussed, okay, well, maybe we can pull off some modified virtual version of the event, and what would that look like? So we brainstormed a whole bunch of different options that we had, keeping in mind that we're a tiny team of 2 people, yet we have to support 330 merchants who in turn employ 2,400 people in this community, and how can we showcase them in a virtual way? So what we decided to do was we emailed everybody like everybody on our merchant list, and we said we want to do this virtual event. We are going to do 6 different videos featuring different things like cooking demonstrations, or you know, DIY craft demonstrations, or a physical fitness workout for kids, and came up with a roster of different video ideas. And we got a whole bunch of merchants sign up for that, which we then proceeded to create that content from scratch ourselves. And then we also invited merchants to post their own videos that day, keeping it short. We invited them to just keep it to 10 or 15 seconds, where they're saying happy hats off day to the community, thanking them for their support during these times, and posting it using the hashtags that we could find the posts then, and repost and share with our many followers. So so our original content combined with the merchant's content generated a whole day of activity online. I did do a little tally of what kind of attention it got, keeping in mind this was kind of a fly by the seat of our pants event that we put together in about 3 weeks. But we had 7 videos in the end, including one from the mayor's office, where he provided greetings from the city together with the city councilors. And then there were 3 other videos that the merchants produced, including a really cute one by an optician, featuring a little parade, an animated parade of Fisher Price, those little figurines from Fisher Price Toys. And we had an online shopping contest as well, which is ongoing. And so the virtual event that day reached 26,000 viewers, and generated almost 3,600 engagements. The various videos cumulatively created 5,300 views, or generated 5,300 views. And if you look, I mean, it sounds like, well, those are big numbers, but if you look at it in comparison to the real event, which attracts 60,000 people, I mean, there's no comparison, right? The real event is the authentic one, the one that's richer and much more meaningful, people meeting face to face. But since we couldn't do that, we tried to replicate at least the spirit of the day by presenting our community's diversity, by including people to jump on in with their comments and their thoughts and their hearts and their likes and all of that stuff, and really just the whole object of the exercise was to remind our community that we are a community. You know, 50% of our merchants live here, so it's really, we're embedded in this community and we're part of it. So just to create those links between the residents and the merchants, to celebrate that in a virtual way, and just create a little bit of buzz.
Oh, that's amazing, Isabel. You can't see it, but I'm feeling little goosebumps. And I think when you talk about community and really just providing that connection, especially your local merchants being individuals that actually are in the residence, is really important. And that spirit, I think, is what's keeping us alive and what's keeping our hope alive as we continue to connect virtually, but also looking forward to our live connections again, especially with food. Everybody loves food, and I'm waiting for it, right? So that's one of the biggest attractions.
We did have, if you want to go on our Facebook page, you can watch an Italian wood fire oven pizza being made, and a Thai dessert being made. So
oh, that's just going to make me drool some more. But great suggestions there. Thank you. I'm going to jump over to Christine on this restart question. And I think from your perspective and experience and your audience being students, how do you restart as you look? So school is going to be ending soon in terms of this period, and you're looking to kind of, enrollment is coming in. What does that look like in terms of for students or for faculties and how they plan the next experience?
Well, just one clarification. It doesn't really end at SFU. It is a tri-semester system. So we have students coming in 3 times a year and convocating 3 times a year. So the faculty have had to just get on board with it. And it's a struggle. We actually every Friday have a coffee chat, the entire SFU Beedie faculty, staff, leadership, it's usually between 75 and 100 colleagues. And a lot of the talk is about what's not working for them in terms of Zoom or Canva or whatever, Blackboard, all of these different types of online. And, there's certainly a lot of instructors and even students that it's just not going to be their forte to be moving everything online. So we had to be very careful. I would say that the strategy, and we're lucky, we're having this come down from SFU leadership. We're having our own department lead with some instructions from Marcom as to how to delicately handle everything. So our individual, so my team is, I've got 4, there's 4 of us all together in employer engagement, was just to take a breath, probably breather of about 2 weeks or so before we really started trying to roll out anything. And the first stage was the communications, whether it was with students or with employers or with faculty. It was just, and this again came from, I'm not going to take credit for this. This was a crisis communications strategy that came from our Marcom team. And that was at first in April, we focused on informing and reassuring. Then the next phase was supporting. So then, that's when we started our targeted individual reach outs and doing pulse checks. All the advisors kind of did their town halls with all of their students to find out what they were going through, what they needed. And now we're finally in the promotion phase. So we've decided on what things we're going to trial this summer and are now, this is when we're asking for participation, asking for recruiters to come back, asking for students to be involved in these online events. And so far the response has been very strong, especially from students. So I guess we're doing something right or something that they need. But it's been very rough, especially I think in the classroom situation with a lot of folks.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Christine. Not an easy situation, but really happy to hear that the students are engaged and are interested. So that's, you're doing something right for sure. Eddie, over to you now. So with the restart question, it's really for you, it's your clients, your business. Can you share examples of or what your clients' decision factors are when they reach out to you and why they're starting their events, or they're kind of starting to kind of search and source? Like, what are they asking, or if are there new criterias within their RFP when they come to you to look at the planning of their future events? What does that look like? Can you share any examples?
Of course. Thank you, Connie. First of all, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the meeting and the live event environment has substantially changed compared to history, and we must change along with it, because right now the event hosts do not know what the COVID-19 situation is going to be down the road, how many room nights they can possibly pick up, what kind of F&B, and whether people can travel in or not. So there are a lot of uncertainty there. We're lucky that we do have a few clients that's ready to book future event. The earliest ones we're seeing right now is 2021. Unfortunately, I have to say that for large scale event, I think, you know, the writings on the wall for 2020, it may not be in the cards for us anymore. So as far as what's the request, it's actually very simple. There's one thing that all meeting planner want. It's make it easy to do business with, okay? And what I mean by that is, first of all, have the flexibility with the city or the hotel. And I'm not talking about just no attrition, no cancellation, or whatever legal term it is. It's also consider the entire relationship. Perhaps that should the program undergo hardship and the room night is not picking up enough, rather than just wash the program, maybe you allow the client to underperform, to forgive about the attrition, or rebook, and you know, without penalty and the things of that nature. So to be flexible, that's the first thing. Second thing is we also want to have speed back. You know, throughout this pandemic, one thing we know is we hate to wait in the line, or we don't want to be on hold for 2 hours, and we don't want to email a contract and wait 3 weeks for somebody to respond and say, oh, I'm not checking email. You know, most people are checking email, we just don't want to respond. So we want to get us feedback to have that easiness to carry on business, because if I'm ready to sign it with me. And finally, as far as ease to do business with, there should be a spread of risk. So at least going back to the contract I talk about, right? It needs to be balanced spread, rather than asking the event organizer to hold all the risk. That's not unrealistic, because nobody has a crystal ball. Now, as far as the stakeholder goes, we see 3 areas. Obviously, the first one is the hotel, and to a certain extent, the tourism bureau. Second one are the requests coming from event hosts. And then finally, what attendee will be expecting. So the first thing coming from hotel is manage that relationship. More than ever, this is a relationship-driven business. Don't be so harsh on 2020 contract. Do not think that you can charge cancellation fee in the world of COVID-19. It's generally a very bad way to manage that relationship. And for the city, make sure you continue to assist all the program, whether citywide or individual program, to rebook rather than just simply cancel, and carry on that sales and marketing. I know it's very hard for everybody working from home, but we need to continue to engage. We know the program are booking shorter terms because I don't have a visibility into the future. We also know all the events are booking closer to home. So in fact, a lot of program that initially was destined for maybe US, Mexico, or points beyond, they are coming home. So that's an opportunity for us to have. And finally, we also know if we allow people to choose their risk, meaning that they will go to an event because they have emotional attachment to it, such as a Smurf market or a convention they like to, they tend to accept that risk a little bit better. What we know is the corporate event is going to stay a little bit quieter for now, because as a human, we do not like the concept other people determine our risk value. And for the event host, that what they're looking for is, again, that ease of a contract. and able to put into safety factors that make attendee feel safe. So the first thing, just as Bek talked about, the environment must change. So the floor plan spread people out, food and beverage. And to a certain extent, you can say, we establish a new cleaning method. We will continue on training and then maybe doing some testing of a staff once in a while to make sure that, we don't incubate any COVID-19 spread. Those, for the most part, is, policy you set out. What attendee will see is very important. So first thing that most hotel already is doing is limit that touch points. So maybe digital key to check in and minimize the social interaction. Will have a physical barrier to protect each other. Some hotels are offering daily renewal of masks and glove, disposable masks and glove, and placed in that room or available at the front desk to pick up. So that's great. As far as the event goes, we have seen that the resorts and the hotels start doing temperature screening. So as people walking through, if you have an elevated temperature, you're gonna be asked to check in with a health official first. And then we also have an occupancy counter to measure how many people in a specific ballroom. So let's say on a good day, a ballroom can fit 1,000 people, but right now with the social distancing, we can only fit 300. But that still is a lot for human to measure. So we have come up with an automatic computerized occupancy counter to measure number of people in the room. So let attendee to have that safety factor and comfort level, and then purifying the air with a HEPA filter, etc. And then in fact, one of the things we do is, my background is electrical engineering. So by pivoting that background, we actually have a set of safety equipment such as a temperature measurement screening, very much like an airport, and we also have a room occupancy counter that we are distributing to various different convention center and hotel they can purchase. And for the events that go into a space that doesn't have it, once again, we try to make it easy to do business with. So we allow them just to rent for one event. When they finish, they just give it back to us. And the one thing we also notice, like we're hearing from hotel and some AV company, they actually love the concept, because now they can buy a unit, treat it almost like a projector of the future, and they can charge per event. So this becomes a win-win-win situation for everyone. Attendee feels safe, AV company get a new revenue stream because they can make an incremental rental revenue all the time, and we get more business back in hotel and our key partners.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Eddie. You're definitely very passionate about your technology and glad they're being used and considered for providing the safety confidence for your clients and for the attendees. So thank you for sharing that. We have a couple questions that's coming in. Before we ask that, I'm actually going to make this a little bit more interactive for the next part. Seth, can you help put the first poll up for us or share the screen? So if you can, our panelists have actually shared a lot of really great feedback and perspective in terms of what they're perceiving as their future restart in terms of the elements that we'll see more often. The question for you as the panelists as well as our participants is, question number one, you can enter this in your chat box. What trends do you see for the restart of events? So feel free to share that in the box for the participants, and for the panelists, we're just going to go around the circle. I don't know where you are in your screen, but I'm going to start with Bek, and then we're going to go around. Bek, what do you think the biggest trend will be as we look at the restart? One trend.
Sorry, you're cutting off, Connie there. What was the question?
Oh, can you share what one trend you see as part of the restart for events?
Yes, well, the trend for the hotels is two parts. One is a guest room. That is a main part of the business. And the second is events and conferences. So as Eddie have mentioned, it's black and white, and we're not expecting large conferences in any city in North America, at least this year. But the trend is changing, and it's moving target. We're trying to adjust to the new business opportunities. And a couple of things that I'll highlight. Think about the boardrooms that companies used to use for their own internal meetings. That's not happening. That's all going outsourced to the larger spaces. So there's an opportunity for hotel spaces to capitalize on that. A lot of the schools, campuses are closed now. They're going virtual. So the school venues that used to be used for testing purposes, for training purposes, in-person training purposes, all of those events are also looking elsewhere. So hotel venues are a great fit or alternative for that as well.
Thank you, Bek. That's good. We're going to save it. There's a lot of trends out there. Let's start with Isabel. Let's go to Isabel. What one trend would you foresee as the restart of the events?
Well, I think until the authorities sound the all clear for society to gather again in large numbers, and again, I can only speak for my own realm of work, I think we'll be leaning quite a lot on virtual interpretations of our events. And as Christine noted in the chat, collaborating a lot with our partners and our stakeholders. That's been a huge part of everything we've undertaken since COVID-19 hit. We've been working very closely with Tourism Burnaby, with Burnaby Board of Trade, with other partners in the neighborhood, to not just for events, but for all the other things, our Shop Local campaigns and all of that sort of thing as well. But as for the virtual events, what I don't think there's going to be a specific trend in terms of the virtual events. I think it will depend on the goal of the event, the size of the organization and its resources, human creativity. There's so many things you can do online, from game playing to breakout room gatherings to shared video watching experiences. We can bring in special guests and entertainers. We can organize shows. In the Heights Merchants case, we just have 2 people on our staff. So Katrina, our marketing and events coordinator, she did most of the heavy lifting in terms of the creative execution. So you asked about trends. I don't know, virtual events and collaborations with stakeholders, I think, will be heavily accessed. But I don't know, like someone else said, Bek, I think it's a moving target. Everything's evolving. Every couple of weeks it looks different than it did before.
It certainly is. Thank you, Isabel. And Christine, what do you foresee as the trend that will be normalized in the future of events?
Well, what we're already seeing is actually a huge uptick in participation in events. So whereas in an in-person event, maybe some things, maybe only 30 attendees, for a career fair, maybe 50 to 80 for a targeted career fair. Now for a 1 hour panel session, we're seeing 150. So we're really tripling, quadrupling, because it is more convenient. And the variety of folks that are joining. So it's not just the current students who are looking for roles, but alumni are probably, out of work right now. Staff and faculty who normally didn't have time to head up to the Burnaby campus, or, even just commuting times, they have more time now. So there's been a lot more sharing of information. We're reaching so many more people.
No, for sure. Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing that. I think you guys are all head on, and I believe the participants are providing the same type of feedback in terms of what they foresee as trends. Eddie, what do you think the biggest trend, or one of the trends that we will see as a consistent experience to expect for events in the future?
Well, since I deal with in-person live events, I'll stick with that. So perception is reality. Everyone want to feel safe. So the next big trend is non-intrusive safety equipment. What I mean by that, thermal cameras, that would be a big trend. For example, nobody like to have infrared thermal gun pointed to your forehead one by one. So that's the difference between intrusive and non-intrusive. Physical barrier, that's a very intrusive. Quite frankly, nobody like it. We know it's a necessity right now, but we don't like it. So thermal screening, room occupancy counter, so telling you how many people is in the room and have a suggested number there. That's important. And you know, just let the people know we are here for you. And clean air, have a HEPA air filter to take those potential airborne viruses and bacteria away. So that's the big trend. And as a bonus, the trend is a flexibility in the future contract.
Thank you for that bonus and your original trend of using technology and thermal. So thank you for that one. We do have at least 2 questions for the panelists. There's one that we actually received prior to the call through email. So I'm going to read that one out for you, and feel free, any one of you can jump in and try to help answer this question. So this one comes from Mun, and he says, if it's not too late, can we ask this question? So he's, in his email, he says, we all know that the value and the necessity that the event industry is to so many people in the province. We also know that we need to heed the recommendations of the health officials of the province. At some point, there will be a requirement to take a plunge or assume a measure risk and open up the gates to welcome larger events, etc. And sometimes that requires a push from industry. And so his question is, when is it time to begin really mobilizing and advocating for the relaxing of event regulations from the tourism sector? Should we begin investing in our own research so that we can have informed decisions with government and provide plans to help expedite the process safely? What's your thoughts? It's a big question to ask. You're thinking about it, processing it.
I can jump in on it. As you all have seen the excitement when New Zealand Prime Minister have announced that they have 0 cases of COVID-19. That is excellent news. But we also need to consider that New Zealand is a small island, and also they're not allowing any incoming traffic, air traffic. So as soon as they open up, they're not isolated situation. So in the North America especially, we are connected to the States. So until the situation gets better in the States, Canada cannot open up the economy for larger events.
Thank you, Bek. Does anyone else want to jump into that question, provide feedback before I jump to the next one? Isabel?
Yeah, I think BC is particularly lucky to have a very competent health officer in Dr. Bonnie Henry. And our association has been listening to her quite closely and just keeping an ear to the ground on what things are going to look like going forward. And I think the public has quite a lot of trust in her, generally speaking. So, you know, in terms of doing our own research when it's safe to open, I don't know, because you know what? Even if we were to I mean, an organization of our size can't afford to really do any substantive research, but even if we could, what would the optics be for us to say, well, you know what, we think we should be pushing the government to move faster on this so that we can organize an event for 50,000 people. The optics of that during an uncertain time when everybody's feeling anxious, I'm not sure that that would do us in good stead. So I know I'm only speaking for our organization, but we really do try to promote our merchants and how well they're taking care of their customers and their employees to keep people safe, so that way we can give people the confidence in the safety of the environment to return to the degree that the government health officials think is okay. So yeah, like I said before, until the government sounds the all clear, we're still gonna have to adapt ourselves for a little while longer.
Thank you, Isabel. Eddie, you unmuted. You want to add to this?
So I was going to say, this is very much a scientific question. So from the disease point of view, there is something called spread of a virus called R0. in scientific world. So R naught equal 1, meaning one person will spread to next. And right now, COVID-19 is R naught is about 2 or so, and many countries have get it down below 1. And when you approaching below 1, what that means is your infected population decrease day by day, and that is when you can start into open. So again, to a certain extent, this is scientific and political question. So when you have R naught that's around 0.75, that means every day you have more people recover than getting the new virus, then that's when the government will consider opening up. And remember, this is a slow feedback loop of maybe 2 to 3 weeks. So as we open up and we still notice an R naught is below 1, that scientifically will tell us it's safe to continue. And once again, I think using technology that's non-intrusive way, such as everything from temperature scan to occupancy counter that enforcing certain part of maybe somewhat of a physical distance, it's going to be very important going forward.
Great, thank you so much for that insight as well, Eddie. We're going to jump on to the next question, and it came from our participants in the chat box, and it's from Alicia. Her question is, I worry about all the general laborers and the general technicians who usually set up events and stages and are now not working. What kind of work can these workers do now that events are likely not going to happen until 2021? I don't know if we have an answer from the panel here, but Eddie, do you want to try to answer it?
So the same story, I mean, for a lot of people in the event industry, we're not working. I know so many meeting planners, site selection, independent third party, folks that are not working. What can we do? We all need to pivot. We need to be creative, finding that win-win situation. Not necessarily just getting people back, and maybe in between this, finding a new way to compensate for the revenue that hotel or organization intrinsically will have otherwise. That's what's needed. And this goes for everybody. Business is not usual. We need to be able to pivot, grow, and invent ourselves day in and day out.
Thank you, Eddie. We're going to have one last poll. It's going to be a fun one, I promise you. So for those that are still with us, thank you. I know we're at our time. So Seth, can you turn on the share screen again to share the question? And feel free to jump in and enter your answers in the chat box. And he's looking for it. He's talking away and I can't hear him.
Sorry there, my apologies. Here. All right.
So this is a fun one. So poll question number 2 is, when we are able to actually start events or be in crowds, what would you wear to help keep you in a safe social distance if you had to wear one of these? So A, would it be a bubble suit? It's a cute one. A pool noodle, which some places are using already, or would you use an extra large hula hoop? Maybe some extra exercise with that too. So feel free to answer that poll for fun, and we'll get some results to share right afterwards. Oh, Elaine says C, to work on slimming the hits. Christine also says hula hoop. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, have we received all the responses? Oh, almost 12 people out of 22 so far. Beck says the pool noodle. Okay.
Pool noodle for sure. Evidently,
pool noodle for sure.
Cannot vote.
I think some people are abstaining from all the people that are left.
That's okay. So if we want to share the poll results, so right now the results, so bubble suit had 54% vote. The pool noodle had 31% vote, and for the 6-foot hula hoop, 23% voted for that. So thank you so much for that fun little engagement there, just to keep it a little bit lighter, because I know it's not the easiest time, but I think we had a really great panel experts share their perspective and their experience. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions before we pass it off to Steph to kind of talk about what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks for our social hour? Am I seeing anything? No? Okay, Seth, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Connie, and thanks for all the panelists. We're gonna actually do a social hour in 2 weeks, because I think what we've acknowledged and what we realize is that, you know, there's a lot of Zoom fatigue that's been happening in the last, I would say in the last 3 or 4 weeks. There's the Zoom fatigue has kind of hit us. You know, we started doing panels and we started getting, you know, 70 people sign up, and then we started seeing a lot of people, you know, just getting tired of the screen. So I think that's really something that we have to acknowledge as a group. And so our next one is going to be on June the 24th. And what we're going to do on that session is we're going to have professional development and for the future of tourism. So we're going to have some BCIT tourism students come on, and we're going to pair them up with political leaders and also industry professionals. And we're going to ask them, you know, what are the rising new stars in tourism going to do right now, right? And what are some of the things that they feel do they need more support? Where are they right now? Because, you know, these are individuals that have just graduated, and I think, you know, something that SFU is probably in a similar situation on is what's next for them, right? I mean, what's their next, you know, whether it's an internship or whether it's a, you know, a practicum, you know, how does that affect, you know, these individuals? Because, I mean, tourism was a booming industry until just 3 months ago. So I think that's something that we'll talk about on June 24th. And, you know, I hope everyone can join us for that. And, you know, as always, feel free to send me any questions over email. I mean, some of you always do. So yeah, that's all I have.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Any final words from our panelists that you want to share before we all go?
I would say stay positive and stay healthy.
Positive.
Yeah. Experimentation over perfection.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. All right.
Everyone.
Well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you again next time.
Thank
Until
you,
then,
Connie. Thank you,
stay
See you
safe.
next time. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.